I'm Darren Pritchett, joined by Mike Singer. He is the Notre Dame football recruiting insider for Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. Mike, a busy weekend for the Fighting Irish coaching staff. 17 visitors last weekend. Why was it such a big weekend?
Official visitors. I think it was 19 in total when you add a couple of unofficial visitors. Drake Bowen, who is dubbed the governor of Notre Dame's 2023 class, and then CJ Carr, the four-star quarterback commit out of the 2024 class, was on campus as well. So 19 in total, 17 officially. I'll just say really quick for those who might be a little bit new to following recruiting, an unofficial versus official visit. You might hear that. You're like, what the heck does that even mean? Official visit, 48 hours long, all expenses paid by the school. Unofficial can actually go as long as you want it to, but the recruits pay their own way. And that's kind of the difference in that aspect logistically. And then also, if a school brings a kid in for an official visit, that's a good indication of the school being very, 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 very interested in the recruit, as well as vice versa. The recruit is very, very, very interested. You don't take an official visit or you don't host an official visit for a kid you're not interested in, vice versa. So that's that. This is just the weekend that Notre Dame identified as, like, let's have this as our biggest recruiting weekend of I believe it'll go down as the biggest of this calendar year. 17 total. It went into the weekend, I believe it was 9 players who were 9 or 10 who were already committed, several other key uncommitted targets who were on campus, big time players. Several of them already have predictions for to land at Notre Dame at blueandgold.com. So yeah, pretty big weekend, Darren.
Let me give an example of a player that is committed and came to campus last weekend, and that's the outstanding pass rusher from Tampa, Keon Keeley. Why would Keon come to Notre Dame this weekend? Is this part of just spending more time with the coaching staff? Was he recruiting? What do you think the goals were for Keon Keeley?
I mean, yeah, have a good time. Visit the school you're committed to. And for the Notre Dame side of things, keep them locked up. That's pretty much the gist. Yeah, I mean, Keon Keeley is the number 11 player in the country, number 1 edge, 5-star recruit. Pretty much any site you're looking at. I mean, Ohio State, Bama, Florida, all these schools still wanting to flip them from the Fighting Irish. So it's Notre Dame's job to keep them locked in the 2023 class. And then for Keeley, it's to continue to make sure that this is home, to get to know other recruits. The official visit, it's very much the red carpet is rolled out for you, Darren. So it's, very structured, very organized visit. Not that unofficials aren't, but this is just a different level. Like, another difference with an official visit, you can go off campus with the coaching staff. So they went to Adventureplex in Mishawaka, arcade, bowling, axe throwing, all this good stuff. The only thing, I mean, Brewburger in Eddy Street Commons, like that area is technically part of Notre Dame's campus. So an unofficial visit, they can go there. But otherwise, it's really, you're just touring campus and facilities or maybe going to Eddy Street Commons. That's the gist of an unofficial. So an official, they went and played golf on Friday night. So just more activities, more fun stuff to do for the kids.
So name drop a little bit. Some of the committed players that were on campus, we just mentioned Keon Keeley. Who else is worth noting?
Well, I would definitely say it's worth noting Peyton Bowen, who, other than Keon, is the really only other player on Notre Dame's commit list, which let me add, is the number 1 class per the 2023 on 3 consensus ranking. So that's a pretty big deal. The 2 highest ranked players happen to be the 2 that have flirted around with some other programs. So Bowen's taken visits to Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Bama, and A&M, I believe it is, since his commitment to Notre Dame on New Year's Day. So it was big for him to get back to Notre Dame's campus this past weekend. I spoke with him yesterday, and I'll have the article up at blueandgold.com. I'm not 100% sure it's this week. I've interviewed so many recruits that unless I want to write 15 articles in a day, then I just can't physically write all of them. And, I've got to space them all out a little bit. So I'll have that at blueandgold.com this week. But Bowen seems to be pretty good with his Notre Dame commitment. So that was definitely a big one to have. And then you had, Sam Pendleton, offensive lineman, Sullivan Absher, a couple guys from North Carolina. They were pictured together doing the Step Brothers. I don't know if you know that movie. Did you see that picture on Twitter, Darren?
I did.
It was pretty funny, I'm having a brain fart on how to explain the picture, but like the Step Brothers movie poster, they're doing that. It's hysterical. Jaden Lamar, 4-star running back. Braylon James, 4-star receiver commit. Keon Keeley was on campus, like we talked about. Both linebacker commits. Preston Zinter, an official visit, and I mentioned earlier Drake Bowen was there unofficially. So those were some of the commits there.
He's Mike Singer, Notre Dame football recruiting insider, Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. I'm Darren Pritchett from WSBT Radio in South Bend. So let's get to Rico Flores. Very exciting wide receiver. Are you getting good vibes from Rico?
Yeah, and had a really good article at blueandgold.com on him that you can read on Tuesday. So make sure to check that out. Like I said, he is visiting Ohio State this weekend. Let me actually make sure. Let me look this up to make sure I have the dates right. Georgia this weekend and Ohio State next weekend. So whenever kids are taking other official visits like that, it's hard to be like super confident. But in talking to Flores and talking to sources on the Notre Dame side of things, everything just seems to look like Notre Dame is the team to beat for this player, who's number 172 player nationally, number 28 receiver in the country. So I'm rolling with the Irish here. I put in that prediction about a month ago, and I think Notre Dame's done the best job of recruiting him too. Even going back to Del Alexander when he was here, like he was recruiting this young man pretty hard. Then Chancey Stuckey and Marcus Freeman get involved, and it's kind of taken it from Notre Dame being a school in the mix to a major contender. And again, I do believe they've done the best job in the recruitment. I believe they'll land him.
Mike, do you have a sense where he might be the best fit at wide receiver for the Fighting Irish?
I think he can play anywhere.
Anywhere?
Yeah, I think he's a boundary field. I like big receivers out in the slot. It's kind of like a tight end, flex tight end, or you just move a big receiver in the slot. I know a lot of people see like a 5'10", 170-pound receiver, and you really want that speedy slot guy. But there's something to just having that big target, security blanket kind of receiver in the slot too. So at 6'1", 190, Flores, yeah, like I said, I think he could play anywhere.
I like Lorenzo Styles in the slot personally.
I mean, because he can do it all. We're working on our football preview right now, and we had to do like a breakout player projection, team MVP, Notre Dame opponent on the rise, predicted record, all this kind of stuff, and I put Styles as my breakthrough player of the year. Notre Dame's there's got to be some receiver who's gonna catch passes for presumably Tyler Buckner, and I don't know, Styles and Buckner came in the same recruiting class, so that was my choice.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in St. Louis through the years, and there's a pretty good football player from the St. Louis area that Notre Dame has been recruiting hard, and that's cornerback Christian Gray. Feels like you've been talking about Christian Gray for about 10 years now, but he was on campus this weekend. Notre Dame is in desperate need, I think it's fair to say, Mike, of adding not only multiple cornerbacks, but we're talking about quality multiple cornerbacks. There are jobs to be had in the future with this program. Do you have a good feeling that Notre Dame eventually could land Christian Gray?
I do have a good feeling. I want to add, I was about maybe a month ago or so, I was doing a live YouTube show at Blue and Gold with our football analyst Tim Hyde, and it was totally off the cuff. We're just looking back in the past decade or so of highly ranked cornerback prospects for Notre Dame. They are very few and far in between. I mean, it is scary how, I don't know, is it mean if I say how bad Notre Dame's recruited at corner over the years? I
They've
mean,
had to be
goodness.
creative once they got kids on campus, Mike.
Yeah, they had to hit on some 3-star type guys like, goodness sakes, Clarence Lewis comes in, doesn't enroll early, played receiver mostly in high school, and then that fall as a true freshman as your starting was it field cornerback in 2020. I mean, it's crazy. And that's not, I'm not trying to slight Clarence Lewis, like he beat out Tariq Bracy, but that just kind of goes to show the where Notre Dame's cornerback, and he's exceeded expectations. I think he's going to be an improved player this year, but like Notre Dame to take the next step as a football program, like we talk about quarterback and receiver all the time, but corner, man, that needs an injection of talent, like a guy like Christian Gray, who's got some twitchy athleticism to him. Lockdown cornerback, 5'11", 170 pounds, number 78 player in the country, number 7 cornerback. He's big time. A recent riser in the Rivals rankings, I believe it was, fresh off an official visit at Notre Dame. Sources feel pretty good about where the Irish stand. July 4th commitments. Notre Dame's had some pretty good history here on July 4th commitment. So hopefully for the Irish's sake, they land Christian Gray. His old high school coach is now LSU's cornerbacks coach, Robert Steeples, which we've talked about a good bit. So that's made the Tigers a lot more interesting of they weren't a competitor in this recruitment until Steeples got there, but now they seem like a threat to the Irish, but I still believe Notre Dame gets the job done for them.
Well, there's no surprise. You look at that board right there, Notre Dame recruiting against Ohio State. Hey, that's going to happen. That's going to be the norm. LSU, obviously, Brian Kelly and many members of his staff are familiar with these recruits, so no surprise LSU is showing up on a lot of these boards. But, Mike, from a novice perspective, I don't remember seeing USC pop up as much this year as in the past 5, 6 years. Now, there's always Notre Dame and USC every once in a while coming together, recruiting the same kid, but it sure seems like it's happening a lot more this year. Am I wrong? Is this the Lincoln Riley impact? What are your thoughts?
So I've been covering Notre Dame for about 3 years. I think this is
How much difference?
pretty. Yeah, it's pretty much the
Okay.
same. I think I would say that Notre Dame is battling LSU a lot more, thanks to good old Bayou Brian. Um, I think they are, and I talked to Tom Lemming, Pret Football Report analyst, godfather of college football recruiting. I asked him to stack up Notre Dame versus Michigan after Notre Dame got a commit from CJ Carr. I was like, how do these two schools compare? I know my reader base. They feed on that kind of content when Notre Dame's out recruiting Michigan. And he didn't even want to talk about Notre Dame versus Michigan recruiting. He was like, just kind of was like, obviously they're out recruiting pretty much every school in the country. Most, obviously not every school, but I mean Notre Dame's recruiting. I mean he thinks that they have one of the best recruiting staffs in the country. He thinks that Notre Dame rivals Ohio State. So you're seeing a lot more Notre Dame versus Ohio State than you are Notre Dame Michigan, which is a pretty good thing because Ohio State's won a national championship recently. Notre Dame and Michigan haven't. Notre Dame seems to be trending more towards going from, how, I don't know how you want to look at it, whether Notre Dame's a tier 3 or tier 2 school, but they just seem to be going up a tier. But they got to land some corners. They got to land a big time quarterback.
Boubacar Traore, defensive end commitment, visited Boston College. Any news there?
Nope, not really. Yeah, took an unofficial visit to Boston College. One Boston College reporter, swears that it was an official visit, which Notre Dame does not like their commitments taking an official visit. But I'm told that it was an unofficial and that it was just, Traore's from Massachusetts. It's the local school. Just took a visit there. He knows the staff. He was committed there for a while before flipping to Notre Dame. So, no, I don't think there's much to see here. I think Traore is locked in with Notre Dame. He's going to take his official to campus this weekend. I think everything's pretty good there, Darren. Not a whole lot to see.
Mike, how can our listeners or people watching on YouTube be a part of the Blue and Gold family?
So if you like this kind of information, you like hearing my rambles, you'll love blueandgold.com because I write a ton of articles every day all about these players. And this is really just like what you hear in these radio segments and YouTube videos are just snippets of the information you would get at blueandgold.com. So we still have this promotional offer. It's the best deal you'll ever see for one of these sites. $1 for a year. It's crazy. And yeah, you get a deal for our football preview magazine. You get that discounted if you're a member at blueandgold.com. I mean, there's all sorts of good stuff going on the website. College World Series coverage, Notre Dame football countdown to the Ohio State game. Obviously, recruiting. Tons of good stuff always going on.
How big of a deal is this? I mean, we changed our sign to 961. I mean, we're 960 because of the dollar. We changed the 0 to a 1. That's how big
There
of
you
a
go.
deal it is.
There you go.